Welcome to Money Talks with me, Gerald Mr. G. Mwandambira, a show that is there for us to have those day-to-day money conversations we sometimes ignore or simply do not know enough about to tackle. Today we're going to talk about that big elephant in the room, that challenge, the thing we never think will happen, retirement. And we're going to talk about retirement planning. How does one plan for retirement and when should one start? To guide the conversation about this topic in studio, I have with me Thabo Ntini, a financial planner, and Margaret Sandlane, a retiree who's going to be sharing her experiences in terms of her journey to retirement. Thank you for coming to studio.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So to start off, let's start with the financial planner. Thabo, what is retirement?
So essentially, Gerald, retirement is that point you reach in your life where you leave formal employment and actually cease to work, and you have a timeline ahead of you that you still need to live off some sort of income. So the fact of retirement is that you cease to work. You don't want to work anymore. You want to live those golden years the best way you can, essentially.
Okay, so you're saying when you retire from your income, but life continues.
Yes.
What is the retirement age in South Africa?
You can retire from the age of 55 if you're in your formal product. However, you do find people that retire much earlier. Your entrepreneurs, guys that do come from wealth, they then decide to leave employment earlier. But from 55 you can retire. Corporates generally set it anywhere between 60 and 65.
Okay. Now, Mam Sandlane, tell us about your journey. How many years did you work and how did retirement happen for you? Did you think about retirement when you were young at 20?
Those days, no.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think people now, they do think about retirement at an early age.
Okay.
I retired at 60 in
Okay.
2012. What I realized is that you need to be ready psychologically.
Okay.
You plan not only 3 months, but 6 months backwards. You start planning. What is it that I want to do? What if my money gets finished and I'm nowhere? So those are the things that need to come into mind.
And how many years did you work before you retired?
40 years.
So you worked a good 40 years. You
Yes.
retired in 2012.
Yeah.
Using hindsight, you've walked the journey. What things could you have done better? Did you have a financial planner before, after, and what was that experience like? I think one of the things I do get a lot is that when you retire, suddenly everyone wants to be your friend and give you advice. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, there was no advice that time. We did have some people from Old Mutual, all these insurance companies. But what do? We started when we're earning 62 Rand a month. Way back 72, 73. So you would buy a ticket to work, buy groceries for 12 Rand. I remember I had shares with the NPS, Natal Building Society. And that's the only money that I saved. It was 10 Rand per month.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Now, Thabo, in terms of retirement itself, are South Africans retiring comfortably? What percentage is said to retire comfortably? And in terms of comfort, what is this comfort?
Well, the South African retirement landscape is quite terrible, where we're looking at only about 6% of South Africa actually being able to afford to retire comfortably.
What's comfortably?
Well, comfortably is that you can match an income replacement ratio, as we would call it, of 75% of what you were earning the day that you left your formal employment, and you are still able to afford your necessities. You spend more time at home. You should be able to go on holiday, join clubs, have fun. Essentially, most people can't do that once they've retired, and this is what South Africans are faced with. We've inadequately provided for retirement.
Now, Mam Sandlane, the picture of retirement is that you're playing with grandchildren, the fridge is full of food, you go on family holidays, Ogogo pays school fees for anyone who wants, you pay for your children, you look after them, black tax, it's all on umama. Is that the reality in terms of your reality? is their income after retirement? And with your retirement lump sum, did you go into any business, investments, and how did that work out?
Let me start with the last question. With my retirement, I had decided fully what I'm going to do. Part of it I invested. And then part of it just put into my account. But I said they must hide the other one on a call account.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that I don't waste, I don't all the time see this big amount and want to withdraw it. So, and yes, I do play around with my grandchildren and you know me, but what is important, I don't solely rely on retirement earnings.
Oh, so you're
I'm
other
doing a
income.
little bit of farming, small scale farming. And I'm looking for a bigger land where it can be a full scale farming.
Okay.
So I'm not lazing around. And if my daughter asks me to go fetch the children, yes, I do, or the grandfather. But mainly, lazing around, that's what makes people not to know what to do. We have planned for our annual traveling, holidaying, the whole family. So, and I'm not affected by the accounts that I have, like paying the holiday club. I just phone and say, this year I want to go to Nice now, or I want to go to USA, and then they do the bookings and whatever.
So Mam Sandlani is clearly one of the few percentage who planned, and retirement is working out for her. But one of the things which she has mentioned is a challenge which is facing more and more retirees in South Africa. You need to find another income after retirement. And she's done it because she has a choice. But for many retirees, they're having to go into that second income by force. What's the government retirement pension fund? A monthly amount?
Oh, it's plus minus 1,600, about 1,630 or 680 if I'm
So
not wrong.
1,600 rand, clearly not enough for you to survive through retirement. Now, what's the difference between Umam Sandlani and somebody who says, I retired and my life ended?
I would say it's the approach that she took. As she said, she started earning 62 rand and she was contributing 10 rand, which is actually more than the 10% that we usually say people should contribute. So she was well on track from the get-go. She went through when the markets were good, when the markets were bad. She stuck her path. She stuck her path and planned ahead. Another big difference that you do find is that most retirees had never actually looked at having a second income prior to actually retiring. Having your investment property, having a small little spaza shop, having a little business that you can run that already gives you some sort of income that will then supplement. So yes, you're working towards a 75% replacement ratio. Let that side income or your second income then push you to that 100% and let you live your best life.
Okay. Now, Mama, you obviously didn't retire alone. There's people who started to work with you.
Yes.
There's friends, colleagues, family, who you've watched retire from a distance.
Yes.
What are the challenges you've seen other people face when they are retired? What are some of the things which worry you in terms of when you see it, it doesn't sit well with you and other retirees?
People are happy to be 60. And then they leave their jobs. But they haven't planned. They start renovating their homes. They start refurbishing and forgetting that they are taking their income and nothing is going in there. Now, there are people who just decide, I'm not going to need a monthly income. I want all my money. And then they invest it with other companies. Now, I know for a fact there is a little amount that I put into Old Mutual. At first, it gave me 1,000 something a month. It went down to 1,002. It went down to 1,000. It's now at 800. I'm surprised. Why is it going down? So now you can imagine if you were relying on that amount, then you are doomed. Then you start looking for a second job, and you find that you can't because of the age. So you start borrowing, you start worrying your children, borrowing money from them. You want to be supported by your children or grandchildren who are working. So these are the things that I have observed from far. And then even having people coming to say, can't you help me with so much? I will refund you whatever date.
Okay. So just before we wrap up, in probably a minute, Sabo, what's this diminishing thing she talks about? It goes 1,800, 700, 500. You're a financial planner. What's going on there?
So essentially, the markets haven't been great for the past 5 years or so. So what could have happened with Mam Sandlani is that she might have been put into a bad product. It could have been a bad financial advice or inappropriate financial advice given to her.
But what is it that's going down?
So what is going down is actually her capital.
Okay.
So the interest that she's earning on this capital that she put in is actually not enough to finance the drawdown rate. Maybe let's say she wanted to draw down 5% of the capital, but she's only earning 3%. And hence now, every year you're now going to have to make your income payments less, depending on what kind of product she was.
So many fancy words. We'll have to unpack some of your fancy words because we don't just have fancy viewers. Join us after the break as we continue our conversation on retirement planning. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Money Talks with me, Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandambira. If you've just tuned in, we're talking about retirement planning. And still with me in studio, I have Thabo Ntini, who's a financial planner, and Margaret Sandlani, Mam Sandlani, let's show some respect, who's a retiree. Now, before the break, Thabo, you started talking all these fancy words which confused Umama. Income, capital, depreciating. What's going on? She basically said she took out a retirement solution which has meant that her money keeps going down every month. I thought her pension was supposed to stay the same. Why is her money going down?
Okay, so essentially what happens is that when you reach retirement age or when you're retiring from whatever provisions you had made, you have two options. There's what's called a life annuity and then there's what's called a living annuity. So I'll start with the more common life annuity solution where you take your capital, you take this money out of your fund, it's invested into some sort of insurance company, and then they promise you a guaranteed income for a certain period or for life. And you can either have a guaranteed term that if you pass away within, let's say, 15 years, the balance of what was going to be paid out within those 15 years will be paid out, yes? And then there's what we call a living annuity.
So with a life annuity, same. You're going to get the same amount of money or more.
You can make it, you can either make it inflation linked, you can choose to have it at a flat rate, which would mean initially it gives you more money, but due to inflationary effect, you're going to lose your purchasing power in the long run.
Now what's this living one?
A living annuity, on the other hand, it's pretty much an open-ended investment. It's like a normal unit trust. However, this one is susceptible to the markets. So how much you earn is based on what you decide to actually take from your capital. So let's say you have R1 million and you want to draw down at 5%, right? So then every single month you're going to get this certain amount of income and it continues that way. But every single year you need to increase. So essentially as financial planners, we state that as a rule of thumb, you should start with a drawdown rate of about 2.5% to 5% maximum to allow your initial capital to actually grow. And as markets haven't been performing well, maybe this is what happened with Mam Sandlani, that over the past 5 years, the markets weren't performing and her money took a knock and she's had to decrease the amount that she takes on a monthly basis.
Now, Mama, we come back to you. What's the best advice you might give yourself or your younger self, knowing how retirement has been? Is there anything you would have changed? Would you have contributed more, or what could you have changed in terms of you meet yourself at 25 years old? What would you tell the young Margaret?
To say save more and spend less at that age. But you know, those days you would have wanted to be smart, and so you waste money on those things. But that was the little part of it. But as I grew up, I became wiser. And then even my final decision on retirement, I decided I'm not taking all my money to go and invest in different houses or different companies. So I left my money with the GPF, which is a government pension fund. And I'm happy. I'm earning close to what I was earning, and every month
Wow.
there's an increase. So I really can't complain.
Okay, so you've got a retiree here.
Yeah.
And I think what Mam Sandlan is important, because a lot of people think it's a good thing to leave the GEPF because it doesn't pay like everywhere else. Can you maybe elaborate in terms of your experience with GEPF, and also quickly, Thabo, perhaps the difference between a retirement annuity and investing in a tax-free savings account?
Okay, so with the GEPF, so that is a defined benefit scheme. I think possibly one of the only ones left in the country. And it essentially gives you a life annuity that we just spoke about. So your income is promised for life, and it does have higher rates because the
So
government.
GEPF is not all bad.
It's not all bad. However, financial planning, there's no one shoe fits all kind of thing. So we do need to look at someone's circumstances. Do they have dependents that they need to look after if they were to pass away in that event? And with the GEPF, your money is only guaranteed, or your capital or balance of payments is only guaranteed within the first 5 years of retirement. If you pass away after 5 years, and then you've lost all your capital. So if you had, let's say, 10 million odd, you'd have lost all your money, and you've only lived for maybe 3 years into retirement.
So what happens after 5 years?
So after 5 years, that money just it doesn't pay out.
Okay.
These are the rules
So,
of the GPF.
so essentially, it's a good solution, but you need to look at the pros and the cons.
Yes.
Now, obviously, when you're planning for retirement, financial planners come and tell you retirement annuity, tax-free savings account. So if I have a choice right now, should I first use my maximum allowance on a tax-free savings account before going into an RA, or it depends?
You can use them hand in hand, actually, because obviously the receiver of revenue does give you refunds or rebates on your contributions to a retirement annuity. So you can have your contributions fixed, 33,000 to a tax-free savings account, let's say, and then every time you do your tax returns, you can claim back the money you've contributed into your retirement annuity as well. So these things can work hand in hand. It's not all so bad. Essentially, this is how I would advise someone to go about it.
Now, Mam Sandlan, you are wise. You've seen life. And what are some of the things you're seeing maybe in the younger generation which concern you around them being prepared for retirement? What do you see which you didn't do in your generation, which the youngsters are doing a lot of and not looking ahead perhaps?
It's like they concentrate on material things. They go for beautiful cars, forgetting that to keep that car on the road is expensive. And they want to move to places that are very expensive, leave their original homes. So it's a worrying issue. And most of them, they go back to their homes because they cannot afford, their new homes. So these are the things that we're observing. It's like people who will simply say, I am leaving this job, I'm going to look for another job, and takes all the money. And after 18 months, the person is bankrupt. That's what is happening with the new generation.
Now, with this new generation, there are also new challenges, Thabo. the rand. When Umama grew up, she's seen inflation happen from 62 rand salary to thousands. And inflation is not going away. Can I invest for retirement in another country offshore, perhaps in US dollars, UK? Can I also look at those investments? Because obviously, if Mama knew about inflation, she would have maybe invested also in pounds and US dollars, where inflation is almost negligible. Can I do that?
Certainly. That is something you can do. Majority of the affluent market in South Africa are already doing this. There's a piece of legislation based in Guernsey. It's called 40EE. So these are your offshore pensions where you can take money and put it there offshore. Obviously, there are minimums, company specific, hence the affluent are the ones that are usually utilizing this. The great thing about that is that those contributions, yes, are not tax deductible. So SARS is not going to refund you while you're contributing during your working life. However, when you're now drawing from that pension, you don't pay any tax on it because you never deducted any of your contributions.
So you're saying the rich people know what they're doing? So how do we get into this? Is there a minimum amount? You're basically saying if I sacrifice my SARS annual tax deduction, I can contribute to a hard currency pension and receive hard currency when I retire tax-free. Is there a minimum amount?
There are minimums. Minimums are generally set by your independent financial planners or your independent financial planning houses that have these agreements with your offshore companies. But essentially, you could start from about $10,000, a lump sum kind of contribution. Last time I checked, they hadn't yet opened up a recurring kind of contribution. You could only do it in a lump sum kind of manner.
Now, Mama, you're hearing these things sometimes, maybe even for the first time. Had you known 10, 15, 20 years ago that you could have also invested in hard currency, would you have taken that option?
I would have taken that option, but we didn't have these opportunities and advices, to say this is the right way to go.
So you see, it's about lack of knowledge sometimes. Now, in terms of retirement on government pension, I also know, because you worked for government, you know people who live off SASA.
SASA.
How do they cope, Mama? How do you see people coping off SASA when you know the challenges?
They are not coping. I know teachers who took voluntary severance package. You remember that VSP thing when it came in? People retired at 55. They took all their monies and they did whatever they did, wasted it. They are home now and they have applied to SASA. They are getting the 1,008 and they can't live on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they've lost their dignity as well.
Yeah. You lose your dignity. I've seen teachers and we have about 4 where I stay. Yeah.
Okay. So fortunately today we had the perfect retiree, somebody who has taught us and given us her words of wisdom. I think the one thing which she keeps mentioning is the I word. Income. When you retire from your job. You don't retire from your life. You don't retire from your children. You retire and still need an income. Thabo, your parting shots, what would you advise anybody who's planning on retirement and needs to make sure that they have income and have a good story to tell, like Umama Sandlani?
Well, essentially, first of all, for the young, I would say start early. Whether you've got an internship going on, start then. Get a small retirement annuity and start. Or start contributing to a tax-free savings and know that I'm putting this away for retirement, not to buy a car or to pay a house or no. And then for those that are already in this field, they're already contributing, you need to consult a professional financial planner who will sit down with you and actually show you that are you on the right track. You could be contributing 10,000 Rand, but you earn 120,000 Rand to 200,000 Rand a month. You probably won't reach your minimum of that 75% income replacement ratio. So you do need to start early. You need to take charge of your life. The internet has a wealth of knowledge. You don't always have to sit in front of one of us professionals to tell you everything and dictate that this is how you must live. You must have those questions that why do you want to do this? Why should I use this? Why not something more secure? You have that, that at your disposal. And then I'd say lastly, start looking into a second income. Especially our generation going, and in the generations just slightly above me, they need to start looking at having a second stream of income. because now we are in that phase where retrenchment is actually a big thing. Not even retirement is the concern now. It's now retrenchment. You get retrenched at 35, at 45, at 50. Where are you going to get a job at that point, kind of thing? So, yes.
So I'd like to thank both of you. Mam Sandlani, thank you for your words of wisdom, and thank you for sharing your experience. Thabo, thanks for your advice as well. And I guess our guests today have told us that you definitely need to have that second income when you retire. You don't retire from life. You have to carry on living. You need to also take on the experience of those who've been before us in terms of taking on the advice which they give us. And also, finally, there are different options. Retirement doesn't have one solution, not one shoe that fits everyone. But the main thing is start planning for your retirement. That's it for today's episode of Money Talks. Until next time, goodbye.